It begins a little bit with sadness. There are those who have the custom of not eating meat or drinking wine except for on Shabbat. If you have questions about that, certainly you can ask me. And that means that Tisha B'Av is observed Wednesday night, July 29th, and Thursday, July 30th. And as we've done with all the holidays during this Zoom land time, we'll be observing the holiday on Zoom. So please join us on that Wednesday night, the 29th, as well as during the day, the 30th, as we have different programs to observe the sad day. But now we will turn to a little bit of a talk about journeys. There's been a lot of virtual journeys that people have been able to take. Shai just did one this past week, giving people a glimpse of Iran that even in regular times, Jews have not been able to visit for a very long time. And so there's some times where having to have this virtual stuff helps us, and we can go visit libraries and museums all over the world. So it is a sad time that we have to spend a lot of time inside, but we can also use it to go out as well, or go out in our mind. So with that in mind, I thought I would examine with you a little bit about what was the journey of the Israelites. Ela Ma'aseh B'nai Israel. This was the marching of B'nai Israel. And the mystics take a lot of the 42 different stations. And the question that has bogged down commentators and scholars and archaeologists alike is, where exactly are these places? And if so, can we go back to them? Can we recreate the journey of the Israelites? Or if we can't, do we have to use our imaginations a little bit more? And so I'll start a little bit by just sharing some of the thoughts that are out there of if there are real places where they are. There is no proof. And then I'm going to end with a way that we can hold on to this text and read this text, regardless of whether we have the proof or not. So I'm actually going to share my screen. And you'll see different maps there are. And notice the first one already says possible route of the Exodus. No map is going to say, we know exactly where the Israelites marched, because we don't know. They're names that are in the Bible. And unless we have other corroboration of those names, especially if they're in different languages, then we don't know where they are. There are a few places that we do know where they are. And so you can sort of see here, obviously we're beginning with Egypt. I'll use my arrow, I guess. And they go down to a place called Sukkot, and then Piachirot, and they cross the sea here. There was no Suez Canal at that point. And then they go down, and notice you'll see question marks. Marah and Elim, and even if we go down a little bit more, Mount Sinai, question mark. You notice I titled the phrase, the document, where in the world is Mount Sinai? And then we go back up, and there's a place called Etzion Gever. That we do know where it is, at least according to the Eitz Chaim. If you're looking at the commentary while the Karen was chanting, it's right near Eilat. So we do know that. And we're pretty sure that Kadesh Barnea is up here. And that's where the scouts left from. We're going to read about that more next week when Moses describes that's the reason why they spent 40 years in the wilderness. So they came here, the scouts, then go up through the hill country and come back and say, we can't do this. And that actually, according to tradition, takes place on Tisha B'Av. And so now they're forced to spend 40 years wandering. They go around down to here, back to Etzion Gever. It's one of the few places they stop twice. And then they go up through the Edomite land and into Moab. And so you have more Mount Hor over here. By the way, it's probably in Petra. And so the Jordanians love to sort of make that a pilgrimage place. And then there should be a question mark here, Har Nevo, where Moses is particularly buried. And then they cross over here at Gilgal and Jericho, if you look at the book of Joshua. So that is sort of what would be called the traditional route of the Exodus. Okay? Then we get to sort of another one, again focusing on the Kadesh Barnea part, and this idea that there's this river of Egypt, which is really, it's called Nahal Mitzrayim, and not Nahar Mitzrayim. Nahar Mitzrayim is the Nile River. Nahal Mitzrayim is this wadi that's over here. And I apologize, I don't remember the Arabic name of the wadi. And so this gives things a little bit more towards the north. So they started over here, and it uses some talk about it in Ezekiel, because Ezekiel talks about heading to the land. I don't know why this doesn't want to let me really focus on the actual map, but I do apologize for it. Let's see. There we go. Okay, well, maybe not. Apologize for that. Okay, here we go. So you can see that we kind of go up a little bit, and we're really past north of Damascus into Syria. Okay, we see Mount Hor question mark. That's where Aaron passes away. And so there's another question mark here, Mount Hor, because it was Mount Hermon perhaps. That's pretty far north. And to see all of Israel, and to talk about crossing the Jordan River, there's no Jordan River north of the Kinneret. So why it's up here, again, I didn't read the scholarliness about it, but we can see that there's very different things. Then we have several different routes. If you look at the back of our Eitz Chaim, it mentions that as well. And so we have the traditional route, the southern routes. We have what's called the northern routes. And again, it's this Nachal Mitzrayim that's over here, the Kadesh Barnea, that the reason why, because it's mentioned that they think that there is a northern route, even though it says they didn't go the way of the Philistines, it seems like they might have. Then we also have central routes. And these are all the different routes that were through the wilderness. We're going to get to the pictures of what it really looks like. And here's where we get to where in the world is Mount Sinai, because you notice all these little purple triangles are possible locations of Mount Sinai. So where can we find one? We got the ones down here. Okay, this is where the monastery is right now. That they sort of use this traditional way. But you have another one up here. There's a possible Mount Sinai, and the central route doesn't seem to have. Oh no, yes, right here. There's a possible Mount Sinai for the central route. So lots of different little crags and things like that. Then we get to the most interesting one, if you want to say sort of crazy, is there's some who say that Mount Sinai is actually in Saudi Arabia itself. Why is that? Because the Midianite territory is really over here on the Arabian Peninsula. There's some who say that there were Midianites as well on the Sinai side, but really it's over here is where the Midianites actually lived archaeologically. So if that's the case, and remember, way back in Exodus, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, and that's where the burning bush was, and that's where the mountain of God is. Some will say that it's actually in Mount Sinai. And then we have the Elim, the place of the 70 palm trees and things like that. And so this scholar puts that over here. And so Kadesh Barnea is over here. And because of Etzion Geber, that's obviously the northern part where you can cross over. There's no more Gulf of Aqaba anymore. So they go down here. This is the Reed Sea, according to them. They go here, up to Kadesh Barnea, back down and around. So which one is it? We don't know. And we can argue, we can sort of say this. To me, it doesn't matter because it's a spiritual journey. So I just want to sort of show you some pictures of what the Sinai Peninsula looks like. Some of you might have had the pleasure of visiting it before 1980. If you did, then hold on to those memories. It's the song Sharm el-Sheikh, going back to the resort down there on the Red Sea. So you can see that it's also pretty, but also barren. So here are all the various different mountains of the Sinai Peninsula. This is also what it looks like on the grounds. You can wonder why there's no water at oftentimes. Imagine marching with all your belongings through such lovely, I mean, it's beautiful, but such territory with not very many provisions. You can see how they can run out of water and food pretty quickly, and there's no animals to be had to eat. Okay, here's an oasis though. Okay, they teach you. When I went to Israel, we did a little bit of survival school, and if you see any plants, some green things growing, you know that water is nearby. And several times it talks about getting water from a rock. How do you get water from a rock? Well, this shows you that water is underneath. And so you might have to sort of strike through this rock and maybe you can find the water. And so when we talk about, the Torah talks about hitting a rock for water, this might be what's going on. Maybe hitting, maybe drilling, whatever it is, but there is water nearby here if you were marching. And then this is modern day Kadesh Barnea. Okay, this is in the Negev. Now we're in the Negev. It's on the Egyptian border, and you can really see this is an oasis. So there's really things that are growing. So there's definitely water here, and it's definitely an ancient campsite for sure. And you can see that it's in between mountains. So it also would be on a trailway to get between Egypt heading north. And so this is what you really needed if you were traveling. You needed to find the various oases. So I'm focusing more on spiritual journey. You know, have different graphics, sort of a journey up into heaven. We have the spiritual journey is individual, highly personal. It can't be organized or regulated. It isn't true that everyone should follow one path. Listen to your own truth. Ram Dass. And life every day is a spiritual journey. You don't need to go anywhere or perform special rituals to complete the mysteries thing called meditation. And so I'll end my sharing here and just sort of share that while we are at home and have to be at home, that we should be focusing on our inner selves and taking a meditation of the heart and a meditation of our mind. And just as the Israelites experienced various different emotions while journeying, especially a lot of anger, a lot of rejection and doubt, they also experienced joy and the blessings of water and food and shelter with Sukkot. And so as we go through this time period, but really any time, meditate on your own spiritual journey. Where are your emotions? Are they in the deeper, darker places? Or can we find the blessings that are in our lives? And with that, I wanted to end with an excerpt from Psalm 68, which really sort of talks about the idea of journeys. And the psalm mentions the journey to Sinai. The righteous shall rejoice. They shall exult in the presence of God. It shall be exceedingly joyful. Sing to God, chant hymns to God's name. Extol God, who rides the clouds. The Lord is God's name. Exalt in God's presence. The father of orphans, the champion of widows. God in God's holy habitation, God's holy mountain. God restores the lonely to their homes, sets free the imprisoned, safe and sound, while the rebellious must live in a parched land. O God, when you went to the head of the army, you marched through the desert, Selah. The earth trembled, the sky rained because of you, God. You, Sinai, because of God, the God of Israel. You released a bountiful rain, O God, when your own land languished. You sustained it. Your tribe dwells there, O God, in your goodness. You provide for the needy. O majestic mountain, Mount Bashan. O jagged mountain, Mount Bashan. Why so hostile, O jagged mountains? For the mountain God desired as God's dwelling. The Lord shall abide there forever, ever. Blessed is the Lord day by day, and Yi Baruch Adonai Yom Yom. God supports us. God is our deliverance. Selah. In assemblies, bless God. Lord, O God, you are from the fountain of Israel. You are awesome, God, in your holy places. It is the God of Israel who gives might and power to the people. Blessed is God. So my prayer is that God is the one who provides needy the rain, who gives us home, and God dwells wherever we are. And so I wish you good spiritual journeys as we will get through this situation. Shabbat shalom.